Good morning.
Good
Good morning,
morning. Good
everyone.
morning, everyone. How's everybody?
Good,
Good.
good.
Doing well. Doing well. I
Well,
know you
okay.
guys. Are you guys surviving? Or are you doing good for real? Because it's cold out there.
It's
Well,
cold
we
out there.
we trying to do the best we can with this blizzard. We
Hmm.
trying to get over because we had a monster storm come through here. So
Right.
yeah, we're trying to make it through it.
Good. Good. Yeah, everyone looks
Well,
well.
okay.
Everyone looks
Well,
well.
thank
So
you
do
so
you.
much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Well,
Look,
we, we
we're on the other
Rosh
end of the
normally,
spectrum. Look,
Yeah.
we're,
yeah,
look,
you're
we're
at the
on
end, you're at
fire.
the end of the
You guys are
spectrum.
freezing out. We're on fire in
That's true.
California.
No, that's
Yeah.
true. That's true. Well, I want to welcome everybody to this today's editions of Corporate Conversations. We do have a guest on here today. We have Marcus Chilimbwe, aka Chill, aka Chilimbwe. He is going to be sitting in a little bit with us and then giving us some great information on how the brain works to create healthy habits. Marcus is advanced in the understanding of the brain and how it functions, and sometimes what makes us tick as people. He is also too from another show where he is a host on our in our collective called the Pseudo Killers. He's part of Community of Skeptics. Marcus is all around everything personable type of guy, and he is funny and has lots of personality. So, hi, Marcus. We want to welcome you to the show today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for
Welcome.
the beautiful
Welcome.
introduction.
Welcome.
Can't wait to hear your presentation.
I know. Cannot wait. So, Rassha and Dewey, you guys have anything to say before we jump right into the show?
Well, I just want to welcome everyone back and say Happy New Year. So, this is our first
Happy
time
New
since the
Year!
new year. So, Happy New Year to everyone. And I'm so glad that we're back together again to have this corporate conversation.
Yeah, happy
Yes.
2025 to everyone out there.
Yes.
Yes, happy 2025. And so, that brings me to how, we're going to introduce another book today because I thought with 2025 and everyone has all of these New Year resolutions, and a bill was passed, right? So that we can, at least through March, so that we could work, right? We can have a job through March. So I
Hmm.
Okay.
figured, why not introduce a book that would have some habits in there, some things that we could go into the new year with a fresh pair of eyes
Mm-hmm.
and kind of, understand the workplace just a tiny bit better. Not going there with all that rah rah from last year, something to kind of just polishes up and give us a few reminders. But it's kind of hard. So, we're going to first break into our first presentation of communication. Then we're going to get into the book, and then we're going to let Marcus take it from there because I think he's able to bring some New Year's insight into how we can begin to change some of these habits that we've brought into from 2024 into 2025. So we want to erase all that. If we want to sit here and start fresh, start new, then I think we need to sit here and start really understanding how these things tie in together.
Yeah, we want to
So
just elevate our self
let
expression as well. Elevate your self expression. Get your mindset ready to start new things so that you'll be ready to progress into your new future.
absolutely, absolutely. Oh, look at
Mhm.
everybody. The gang's all here. Oh my
Hello.
gosh, Marcus just
Hello.
brought
Come on
everybody.
in.
He brought Cedric and Joel. I see Sakina.
Hi,
Yeah,
everyone.
he brought Val. Hey, Val. He brought his whole crew here. Look at that. Marcus the superstar. We appreciate that. Absolutely love it.
Yes, we got the tea this
So this
morning.
is so and just in case everyone don't know too, this is Dewey Reynolds. He's also um
Woo-wee.
he also works in corporate as well. So that's Dewey
Yes.
Reynolds. And then we have, of course, Rassha, Real Talk Rassha. She's gonna give it to you real with no
Welcome.
filter. So Okay, let's get into it, you all. Let's get into
All
it. Let's
right.
see what we got here. Let's see what we got here.
Let's bring that juice on over here.
See, Rasha, this is part. So for those who also are do not know, we have a theme, a book by Gallup, um, that we're going into. We talk about these 34 themes. The book is called Strength Finders. Rasha, do you have the book? Anybody got the book close? I think
I
I
don't
do.
have the good close. I'm so sorry. But it's called
Cool.
Strength Fighters. And we're
Yeah,
going through
yeah.
the 34
It's right here,
themes.
Dave Clifton. Hmm.
Mhm.
And he talks about using our um, helping us to find our strengths and making sure that we understand that a strength is a strength and not a weakness. So we don't focus on the things that we can improve. We focus on all the things that we can improve. And
Right.
so if something has always been a weakness for you, then this book allows you to see that that same weakness can be turned into a strength. And so
Hmm.
at work, we face all types of challenges, right? We face, where do we fit in? We face things like we don't understand the language. We don't understand what our bosses are talking about. There's a lot of different things going on in the workforce environment. And when we can't connect the dots and put it together, it really causes us to want to say, hey, you know what? Maybe work is not for me. I have to try another route, which is okay to do. But then we have this, channel here where we're really diving into personal development, making sure that
Hmm.
you are making the most out of your workplace environment, whatever that is and
Right.
whatever it looks like,
Hmm.
right? So we've
Yeah.
been
And
going through these things.
hmm.
We went through, the ranger, the commander.
Hmm.
Today we're going to talk a little bit about communication, and then we're going to
Yes.
tie it all into these habits that we have, that have hardwired onto our brains, and really try to figure out, how do we sit here and begin to change some of these things.
Right,
So
because
let me share
everybody
my
has
screen.
personal strengths that they need to develop. And once you realize what your personal strength is that naturally or is intrinsically part of you, then you can develop that. And then once you develop your strengths, then you could see the different strengths in others that you can develop and utilize as well, especially if you're in management. But if you are just simply a coworker or just a person there on the job, you can utilize your strengths to best fit your business goals to help you elevate your career to the next level.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so I don't know if it's sharing or not sharing, but here we go. Let me know
There
if
it
you all
is.
can see this.
Mhm.
Okay, now we see it.
Okay.
I think
All
it's a
right.
little bit slow.
Yeah, it's just delayed a little bit, maybe. And so the big part of this is communication. If you are a communicator who is able to have a great delivery, sometimes your information comes over well. If you do not have a great delivery, it doesn't matter what you say, it will not be received. So you want to definitely develop
Mhm.
communication so you can have sweet communion. And so this is what we're going to be discussing today, communication.
So are you all able to see this yet, or is it still looking like it's getting ready to show, but it's not exactly showing?
No,
It's
we can,
actually
I can
no,
see it. Yeah, it's on display. We can
it's on
see it.
display. Yes.
Okay.
With the Strength Finder book too.
Okay. Okay. So for those who have been following along, we're on communication today. We're not going to go into a lot about communication, but we're going to tap in just enough so that you can kind of understand the communication theme and
Mhm.
how it influences your day within your workplace. Okay. So, communication. People with strong communication talents bring attention and focus to important messages. They're also really good presenters. They're
Mhm.
also great speakers, and they are quite the conversationalists.
Mhm.
So, communication, theme communication. I got to sit here and I see this right here where this didn't come up. And the big one, I should have probably ran this after I made all of those changes that I made to it to kind of condense it and shorten it. But it's okay. It's
It gets
okay.
the point
So
across.
this
It
is,
gets the point across.
yeah, yeah. So right, we are here with the 7 C's of communication, Rassha. This is a good time, a good segue for you to also, tell the people about the other 2 forms of communication, too, that you wanted to throw in there, which was, I think, indirect and subliminal.
Yes.
So that would be the 7, 8, 9 C's of communication, right? And we have
Yeah.
clear communication, concise communication, we have concrete communication, we have correct communication, coherent, and you can also have incoherent communication,
And
complete communication, courteous communication, and Rassha wanted to throw in there indirect communication and
subliminal
communication.
communication.
Okay. So the following thing, these are descriptions. They highlight the thoughts, feelings, and behavior of communication. And I know that says activator, but it's supposed to say communication. So here we have nonverbal communication. So that could almost to put me in that mindset of that subliminal. Nonverbal communication refers to any form of communication that is not transmitted through the spoken word.
And you have to be very mindful and you have to be very vigilant to pick up on that nonverbal communication, because the person can tell you with their body language whether they're open to what you have to say, whether they're in the process of, I don't know, doing physical harm, or whether they are just on some other type of energy. So that nonverbal communication can directly speak, and it can speak in volumes, and you just have to really pay attention. I think I was with a person and I was getting ready to I guess interview them or ask them questions about a situation that I had to encounter on the job, and their body language, they were closed, they had their arms crossed, they had
Body
their head
language.
cocked to the side, they weren't speaking, they weren't giving me a direct eye contact. So I'm okay, I'm watching. So you have to be really vigilant and
so, okay, but what you
go ahead.
okay, but when you're saying you're watching, what does that mean exactly? What do you mean you're watching?
I'm paying
Watching
attention
what?
to that
Because
body language, the nonverbal communication. There are indicators that I'm getting from the person, whether they're ready to communicate, whether they're, in the processes of fight or flight, whatever it is, the communication is there, and is projected by the way they hold themselves, their body language.
what? No, I get that, but I'm saying
Okay.
what still, because right. I mean, there was a time when I had to sit in front of my big bosses, and I'm like, okay, I'm mad, but I'm not gonna say nothing. But yeah, all my nonverbal communication was like, yeah, I really can't stand you. You getting on my nerves right about now. Please shut up and can I go? Right? All of those things in that. And she mentioned that nonverbal body language communication, but I didn't care. Right? I didn't care at that time. But I'm saying to you, when you say that's what you see in another person, what does that mean? Are you looking, because how do you counter that? How do you, if I'm looking at you like, oh, I really can't stand you while you're sitting here talking, what are you going to do about that?
Well, see, there's nothing you can do about it. The only thing that you will do is just develop or hit the points that you need to discuss with them, because the discussion needs to be had. Crucial conversation needs to take place. But you just keep that mental note. You're looking at that body language, and either it's being receptive or it's being rejected.
Girl, for me, I'm a whole. Well, then put me down for number one, Alex, for 500. Gemini is a whole nonverbal communicator, because I will roll my eyes, pull up my lip, right, fold my arms, and the whole nine. So I know she was probably thinking to herself like, "Oh my God, I can't believe her," but she better have believed it, because that's exactly what it was. And I wasn't gonna open up my mouth and get myself further, into.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I was
Trouble.
definitely gonna sit here and do all the nonverbal stuff that made a
Right.
difference in our
You
conversation.
send
I
off
hope
them
she
body signals.
absolutely understood it.
Mm-hmm. Whether it be
So
positive or
God
negative, we
divided
send off
between,
signals. Mm-hmm.
yeah, I hope she read those signals. That's all I got with that. So let me move on. So wait. Then we have verbal communication. Verbal communication is any form of communication that occurs through spoken word. And I will say, when we're talking about the types of communication here, right, verbal, nonverbal, written, and visual, some people are great verbal communicators. Some
Mm-hmm.
people can verbally communicate a lot better than uh, others,
Yes. Yeah.
right? And some people struggle
Mhm.
with verbal communication and they would prefer to do it in a non-verbal way, or
Mm-hmm.
they would prefer to do it in an alternative way, which is okay too, right? So
Mm.
then we have our visual communicators. So our
Mm-hmm.
visual communicators means that they transfer the information to a person in a format that can be read or viewed, right? And it's okay. Our visual communicators are fantastic. They're artists. They're creators. They're innovators.
Mm-hmm.
And where people see words, they see visual and how to make
Mm-hmm.
that come to life. And I absolutely am in love with our visual communicators. They make the world go round. They
Mm-hmm.
can say things in a visual way and really absolve yourself from verbal. Sometimes people will hold you to the things that you say,
Mm-hmm.
right? But then when it's visual, they can't exactly hold you to that, because that begins to open up another type of process in your mind. It opens up something else with an image. So people cannot hold you to your creative standards. They
Mm-hmm.
just can't, because it is visual. So I absolutely love the way a visual communicator can convey something um, with nonverbal communication. Then we have our writers. We have our written communicators, right? Written
Mm-hmm.
communicators involve the use of words, syntax, and paragraphs in order to communicate. Now, for me, the strange part about the written communicator and the visual communicator is that people will hold you to a verbal standard. If you say something, people will run it back, roll it back, and hold you to what you have said. But they also will do that in written communication.
Mm-hmm.
They will bring it up, pull it up, and say, hey, you wrote this. Now, you didn't say it, but you wrote it. And writing is on that same equal playing field as the verbal communicator.
Mm-hmm.
But visual and nonverbal, they can't necessarily hold you to that. But that written communicator and that verbal, boy, that is quite the pair right there. So they will hold
Mm-hmm.
your feet to the fire if you have written something that people can read.
Mm-hmm.
I got a question. So real quick,
Mhm.
we're talking about written communication. I think of like great authors and everything. Why do you think they were able to communicate so well through their writing, through their books and everything? Like a Stephen King or like a James Baldwin or Richard Wright or like whoever that became great writers. Why do you think they were able to communicate so well through their writing? I mean, that's a question for everybody. Why do you think
Well,
that's
writing brings things to life, right? The
right?
imagination and writing goes hand in hand. You
And
can
they can
sit
communicate
here
through their
and
writing.
yeah, but if you can if you can create an image,
Mm.
right? You can create an image in someone's mind, you can definitely take it from there. You can take it as far as you need to. Like before TV, books were all the thing, right? All people
Mm-hmm.
had,
Right. Hmm.
or was their imagination,
Yeah, that's
right? So
right.
spoken word has
Hmm.
always been the end all be all when it comes to helping, human beings remember something, create something, imagine something, see places, faraway places that they can't visit, but
Well,
maybe
because
they can put them place themselves there.
mm-hmm. Well, like
Go
so I
ahead,
think a
Dewey.
famous person once said, when you write a story, you're painting a picture with words.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's
absolutely.
all you're doing. Mm-hmm.
And then
And
another
not to
mark
mention
of a
too,
good. Go ahead, John.
uh, yeah, not to mention too, don't forget early books had no pictures for real,
Mm-hmm.
Sure did.
right? So can you imagine a full book with
Mm-hmm.
just words, no pictures?
Mm-hmm.
But I think the mark of a good writer is to be able to take the visual or the experience, whether it be something that they handled, touched, or thought of, and put it into words where the reader
Mm-hmm.
can actually feel it, see it, taste it, touch it, not necessarily being there, but being there. They can actually be there. So if they can do that, then that's a really great writer. And I think that some people write just for fact. Some people write for because they have this artistic bent where they can, make flowery words or, put something together to where it becomes a work of art. But being able to communicate and to convey your point is something that we all have to control, whether it be verbal, nonverbal, in visual communication, and in written communication. Remember, you are in control of everything you present.
Well,
So,
let me ask this real quick before we move on.
So then we're
That's well
saying
said,
that
Rocky.
communication.
Uh-huh.
So then,
Okay,
Rassha, we're saying that communication is in the eye of the beholder, like beauty, right?
right. But I
mhm.
wanted to ask real quick before we move on. Why? Okay, we're still on written communication. You're able to communicate through writing, but why do you think some people have these just vivid imagination? They can create worlds that don't exist. They can create characters that don't exist, never did exist, probably never will exist. But like we've seen a lot of fantasy films and
Mhm.
horror and some other stuff about, they create these worlds and these characters that are strictly out of their imagination. These people never did exist. These are not real life characters or situations. Why do you think that's so?
Well, Dewey,
Yes, ma'am.
just to bring this back around to
Hmm.
work, how
Hmm.
about we how about we go into written communication as it pertains to per se like our IRM, something
Okay,
that is
right.
written for
Mhm.
thousands of people,
Yeah.
and we have to follow it to the
Mhm.
letter. And
Right.
following it to the letter means the difference between getting your work done correctly or not getting your work done at all.
Right.
And
Why
when
she?
people
Mhm.
go ahead,
I was
Rassha.
just, I was gonna say, why she bring that up? Because the IRM could be the start of so many fights, so many people getting fired, because sometimes it's subject to the interpretation of the reader.
There we
Mhm.
go. Now we talking. Now we cooking with gas. That's it. That's it. So when we're talking about these things as it pertains to, our work environment, and we have directions and instructions, that written
Mhm.
communication
Mhm.
is key. And
Yes,
it is left up into the interpretation of the person who is reading it, because it makes the difference between them getting their job done or not. So they better find an interpretation and go with
Mhm.
it, right? And if
yeah,
it's wrong,
but
they can
I
sit here and correct it later.
I don't know why people get so angry. Why are you so mad? So just because your
They're
interpretation
angry
isn't
because it's not coming
accepted,
from their mind, right? And this is what we're talking about here. So when it
yes,
comes to,
it,
when it comes to
it
the
evokes
and
strong feelings.
here's the key, here's the kicker, Rasha, right?
Yeah.
The words, the sentences, and the paragraphs of that IRM, people get irate, do they
Oh
not?
yes, just live
Yeah.
it.
They get irate. Yeah,
But I was gonna,
it has caused more fights than a little bit in the
yes,
workforce environment where people are supposed to be
yeah. That's
professional,
what I was like.
but
Why
not
she
when it
bring that
comes
up?
to this written communication,
Right, and then I
And
was gonna just,
so, but we have to respect it because it's there and
that's
it's the
true.
only guidance that we have,
I
right?
was gonna piggyback off of what Dewey was saying, how people have some such vivid imaginations. But if the truth be told, truth or factual things are stranger than fiction.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. Yeah.
So it's
We've heard
strange.
that
So you
throughout
just
history.
grab something from that actually happened. Like I told people, you can write a great book. All you got to do is just look in the newspaper and get your characters out the newspaper and start writing that book.
Mhm. Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
get your
Really,
characters out the newspaper. We're moving on. Thank you.
Okay. All righty.
all the
We're
book
not doing that.
writers,
You're
Jim.
not. We're moving on. So
That's
this is
it.
communication. So you know, sometimes, most communicators, or some people believe that most people have a very short attention span, right? They're
Yes.
bombarded every day with information, but very little of it survives, right? They want your information, whether it's about an idea, an event, or a product with features and benefits, or a discovery or a lesson. So, right. So this is basically sitting here saying that the communicator pretty much hunts for the perfect phrase. They hunt for, because when we're talking about this command theme right here, communication, this is not any type of communicator. This is communication as a strength. So when it starts off that people have very short or little attention spans, what it's actually saying is that sometimes when you are listening to others, right, in a community where people are communicating, they're either saying some things that are not or are not of interest to you, or they're saying that people in general do not have attention spans to listen to others who are communicating, right? It's saying they are bombarded by information, but very little survives, meaning that you hear but you didn't retain, right?
Right.
Um, you want your information, whether an idea, an event, a product feature and benefit, a discovery, or a lesson, to survive. So that means whatever you're saying, you would like for people to have a proper takeaway from it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
want to divert their attention toward you and capture it. You want people, but then we're talking about speakers who are people who are in that dynamic lane of communication, right? So it says you want to divert their attention toward you and then capture it, lock it in. People are drawn toward those who take a stance and ask them to move in a certain direction. People will be drawn to you in this form of communication when you are a dynamic speaker. But some people are just basic speakers, and some people are in that dynamic lane of speaking. How do we, what is that shift that makes us go from, a teeny weeny little voice to a great big voice? I'm not exactly sure, about what makes that person that dynamic speaker or that dynamic conversationalist. But these are people who have the ability to move others with their communication and with the way that they speak.
Gemini, I was gonna piggyback off of you while you cooking and throw some carrots in that stew you got going on. Um, it depends on if several things. If you like the speaker, if you don't like the speaker, that can affect the delivery. And then also, is the subject matter important to you? Because if the subject matter isn't important, it doesn't matter how dynamic that person is, it won't draw you to that particular subject. Now, the person who is a boring speaker, who is just talking about the subject as a matter of fact, if the subject is important to you, you will be engaged. But then there are charismatic speakers that will draw people in and bring them into the information that they are trying to convey, and will pull them, and they're just into it, they're engaged, they're emotionally involved. So sometimes it depends on the information that's being delivered, the speaker who's delivering it, and whether or not the audience is receptive.
Yeah.
Well, the audience doesn't, you know what? The audience to me, though, does not have to be receptive. What happens is the audience at least need to hear the takeaway. So even
Okay.
if it wasn't something that you need, that was your cup of tea, you need, because at work we do it all the time. There are
Right.
people who cannot stand the meetings that we have at work.
Yes.
They cannot stand the all employee meetings. They cannot stand the team meetings. They cannot stand any of the meetings, right? But yet and still, will we hold them accountable for something that they missed within that meeting, yes, we will, all day
Indeed.
long, right? So then,
All day, every
therefore,
day.
whether this was important to you or not, you have to teach yourself how to grab the important things that people are saying from a meeting. Because I'm not going to share my notes with you. You should have been in that meeting instead of making up an excuse because you didn't want to be there. And I understand that. Because we have
Yeah, they do
lots of
that all
people
the
that
time.
their stomachs start hurting all of a sudden whenever there's a meeting, right? Their kids get in trouble at school all of a sudden when there's a meeting. Hey, I remember I have to take, my spouse to the doctor whenever there's a meeting. Meetings make people nervous. They really hate being in closed space, in close quarters with others. And they really hate to hear other people talk, no matter what it is that they're saying. But it is your job when you're in a workplace to have effective communication. And so when these things bother you, I think it's probably best if you're an employee who absolutely cannot stand all the many meetings that your job has. I think it's probably best for you to go and have a talk with somebody about that so that you can learn how to get the best from the meeting. Maybe you just have the agenda.
How about you find a job where you don't have to go to a meeting or make your own employment? How about that?
Say that again, the first part.
I said, how about you find another job where you don't have to do all those meetings? Get another job. Do something different. How about
we're not kicking you out the job just because you don't want to attend the meeting. But there are lots of people who don't want to attend the meetings, and they usually don't. But we're saying, right, when you are a person that is like that, there's some other things that you can do to sit here and make the most of your workday. That's what we're, that's the big takeaway. Right? Because there are lots of people, they can't stand the meeting. I think we've talked about this before, how they make up all types of excuses just so they don't have to attend.
But there are people that will attend the meeting.
A lot of the times, I think what people are missing is a lot of the times in any meeting, because of so many people, they're not going to send an email out. It would take too much writing. So they would rather have a meeting and tell you what's going on within your organization or within your workplace with a meeting versus an email.
And
what happens is that we don't think nothing is ever said in the meetings when that's far from the truth. Lots of things are said in the meetings that you're not going to hear anywhere else. Go ahead, Rassha.
And then they'll be in the meeting and still not hear it. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't hear. No, weren't you in the meeting? Yes.
Well, you know what? If you really, I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm gonna be straight up honest with you. There are people that fall asleep at meetings.
Yes.
I've seen people nodding off and
we know.
So, so that right there tells you why they miss everything, because they were asleep. So
there are people who go because again they don't want to be there, and the very fact that they had to bring themselves there in the first place took a lot. And so I respect that about people, right? It took a lot to bring yourself to the meeting when you really didn't want to be there, and so you didn't hear it. But again, they're going to always present you with handouts and an agenda.
Yes.
So you'll be able to, figure out what was going on in this meeting. And a lot of times people really just feel like, listen, it doesn't pertain to me. I'm not trying to climb the corporate ladder. I don't want to go any higher or any further. I didn't hear it because it didn't pertain to me. Right. And I can respect that. And I can respect that too. But when we're talking about communication, I think if you're a person who fits, any of the other categories, the nonverbal, verbal, visual, or a writer, it's probably best just to go sit and talk to, your manager, or talk to, someone who can help you really understand, why the communication is lagging. Why didn't you want to hear what was being said? Why didn't you feel like there was a takeaway from what was being said?
But I believe that what they need to do, right? I know what they need to do is to just make sure that whatever it is, the communication is to either receive something or to send something. Either you're receiving a message or you're sending a message. And the most important part of the things that we don't realize when we meet, we're there to get something out of the meeting. So if you don't want to make the meeting or don't want to participate in the meeting, at least make it worth your while for being there. Put
Yeah.
something
There you
in,
go.
get something out.
There you go. Find something, right?
Right.
Find a takeaway. Find a complete takeaway from because I'm gonna tell you what, we had a meeting right before New Year's. And there was a manager who was literally telling everyone, "Hey, you don't have to go. It's not mandatory. You don't have to go." He was pissed, right? Because he was upset at upper management about
Oh,
some
wow.
things, and he was going on and telling the rest of the team how they didn't have to be at this meeting. Well, come to find out, this meeting was so important that he almost caused his team to lose out on things that would have benefited
Mhm.
the team as a whole. It was a very important meeting. And was it mandatory? No, it wasn't. But when you don't have people that will push the importance of things or use their communication to push the unimportance of things, then it matters,
Yes, and I think
right?
we need
All
to
of
make
that
sure
matters.
you don't leave your brains at home. So I think my dad, he was working as a when he first came to California from Louisiana, he was working as a dishwasher somewhere probably. And the manager or the boss told him, be here at such and such a time. Co-worker gonna come in here. Oh, you could get here at such and such time. Well, he got there when the co-worker told him to get there. But guess what? You were there, the information was communicated to you verbally from the person that was over you, that gave the authority over whatever your job was, but you decided to go with that coworker. There are people that are in these corporate areas that are there to sabotage the needs of the corporation, and they will use whomever will allow themselves to be misdirected into doing anything outside of what they're supposed to be doing. So you have to really pay attention and listen to the information that's being communicated to you, and you need to make the determination as to whether I need to follow this or not. But you need to make sure your
Well,
decisions align with the business needs.
I mean,
And I'm
in
just talking
that
about
instance, though,
communication.
yeah, but I'm saying it doesn't sound like in that instance though that a person didn't want to hear the information. It just sounded like it's more like a oops, dang, you know what? I
Mhm.
wasn't there for whatever reasons. I'm gonna ask somebody else, see if they know what's going on. And the
Mhm.
person that they asked miscommunicated some things. And people will do that, right? Because they
That's
don't
true.
understand the big takeaway themselves. And
Yes.
sometimes it can tank you and it can sabotage you. There's been lots of misinformation about lots
Mhm.
of things because when you don't properly hear them or you don't properly understand them, there is a chance that you can go and miscommunicate that to someone else,
That's true.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's just
And
like
so that
telephone.
is the, yeah, like telephone,
Just like
absolutely. And so
telephone.
I
Uh-huh.
think that's where that accountability and that
Right.
responsibility to get the information at least secondhand, but definitely not third hand, because some of that information can sit here and mislead you and cause you to believe some things that are not correct. Right? I
Mhm.
would share this with you. In college, right? There is a time where, and I'm talking about I'm grown at this point. I didn't understand what the teachers were talking about. The teacher was white, and here it is, I'm black. And I do know that there are some, just because my background is in early childhood K through 5, so I do
Mhm.
understand that there are communicative gaps between races and groups of people. So I literally hired the young lady who was a white teenager next to me. And when I got my paper back, I realized I did not understand what she was saying, was because I kept on getting D's.
Mhm.
D is in dog, not B, right? D's. And I'm like, wow, I thought I heard what she said, but apparently I didn't. So I tested the theory and I asked the young lady, I said, hey, did she just say this, and this? And she said, no, she said this, and this. And I said, oh, very interesting. So that means I don't know what the teacher is saying. I said, can you take notes for me? because my grades seem to be lacking here. And I really want to understand what the teacher's saying, but I don't understand what she's saying. Can you sit here? Can I pay you to take notes for me? And she said, yeah. And the minute she took the notes and I compared them to the notes I was taking down, I realized that there is a serious communication gap
Mhm.
between not only just people, but other ethnicities.
Mhm.
There is a communication gap if you haven't been in a place long enough to pick up the lingo or the language. In my case, where I was just going back to school, for some other things. I think I was going back to school really to take some of the last classes that I had needed to graduate, and I hadn't been in educational environment for a little while, and so that could have been it. But there are lots of barriers, and I'm saying that when you find yourself in a place where you do not understand what people are talking about, it is it's it's a good practice to find
Check
someone
it.
that can help you
Check.
figure out what is
Mhm.
being said
Right.
on, and make sure that if it is
Just
something that
getting the
you're interested in,
understanding. Yes.
if it's a topic that you're interested
Yes.
in, if it is something that you're interested in, probably get even with that person if you can, to say,
Mhm.
hey, you know what? I don't know what you're saying. When you talk, I hear you and I'm looking dead at you, but I really don't know what you guys are talking about. And you can't
And
tell me that maybe it's not my lane, or maybe it's not a subject that I'm not, that I don't understand. No, I want to begin to understand it. So then there has to be a teacher or someone else around to be able to help you understand the
mhm.
information that sounds a little all over the place to you,
Yes,
because it
you're
happens.
right. And that's why I say usually when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, and you just really got to get a barometer to make sure that you're receiving the information properly, you're processing the information properly, so that you do have a deeper level of understanding, so you know what actually is being said, and you're not assuming what's being said, or nor are you adding to or taking away from what's being said. So communication is really important, and it's a two-way street, and it's a dialogue that has to happen between both parts.
So you said this good here. So this little post here on this on the screen, it says, when everyone asks questions and offer solutions and describe situations and raise issues, the group's collective intelligence far exceeds that of any single person. Yeah, we have
Mhm.
to come out of that ego. We want to use our words. I know for
Be
us in our
teachable.
community, we love to use our words to,
Yes.
tear people up. In our community,
Mhm.
in our community, we say stuff like, "Hey, you want that smoke? We'll give you that smoke. Hey, you know what I'm saying? We'll sit here and beat you down with this,
Mhm.
information." However, though, you know, the group's collective intelligence far exceeds any that of a single person. So it's
Right.
really about using our words to sit here and build up the body of the collective, versus always keeping that smoke, which is exclusive, not inclusive, and it keeps people
Mhm.
away from your content, from what you
Right.
want people to hear. You want everyone to hear what you're saying. However, our choice of communication style sometimes isolates others. And
Right.
that's not where we're going. And at work, we never want to do that, because some of us are managers, right? Rosh is a manager. I am a manager. There's no way um, that many people that I have on my team, I do not want them to ever feel like they don't know what it is I'm
Mhm.
talking about.
Right.
That would be insane to me if someone said, Miss LaShawn, I don't know what you're saying. I don't know what that meant." Well, then come step into my office and let me help you understand
Mhm.
where you're having some trouble, or what do you want to know? What would you like for me to clear up and explain to you and make it a little bit clearer? Right?
Right.
That's something that because again, our choice of words when we communicate is normally to tear somebody up as opposed to build them up. And
Right.
that's where we want to go with our choice of communication, because we are professionals. And anytime you're in a workplace, unless
Mhm.
it's totally personal and it's just only between you and that person,
Mhm.
only when you're in a work environment, your communication needs to be sound, and it needs to be inclusive as opposed to exclusive.
That's right. That is so true.
right? So the communication here, I am an entertaining conversationalist. We all know people like that. I do. I know a lot of great conversationalists. As a matter of fact, I love conversation because I love conversationalists. And I can sit and conversate with you all day as opposed to talk to you. I probably never talk to you, but I will converse with you. Right? It says, I need a sounding board, an audience. People on the platform struggle, right? Some people say, hey, I can't come on by myself. I would prefer an audience. I need a sounding board, someone who can sit here and, and go back and forth with me. A sounding board.
Right.
Right? I love stories and I love storytellers. That was what we were talking about. Dewey was talking about earlier with that written communication. Right? Storytellers. I hate experience without expression. That tells me some people want to look at the face, your facial expressions. Some people like expressive people. Some people use their hands and their neck and will roll their eyes and da 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 da. Have all that rah rah. When they're sitting here talking. And I bring attention to messages that must be heard. Those are your charismatic folk. Right? I have a dream that one day all the
Come
brown
on.
kids and red
Come on.
kids.
Tell it. But communication is one of the ways that we express ourselves. And basically what we really want to do this year is elevate our self-expression to a level that'll bring us into a different stratosphere. So we're gonna do some things this year. It's gonna be great.
Oh man. Oh gosh. So if you live with a communicator, right, your talents can be highly effective when your message has substance, when you don't rely on your talents alone, and you take your communication to the level of strength by developing your knowledge and expertise in a certain area. That's what we do. We do that in our body of collective. So whatever area we're strong in, that is where our communication is most effective. My communication is not most effective when I'm talking about history or religion because it does not, even though I absolutely love it, right? And I can tell you where you're lying at, but it doesn't mean I'm going to be able to effectively banter back and forth with you about it because, my knowledge and my expertise may not be in that area. So sometimes when we beat people up, we're beating them up with the things that we know and not necessarily what we don't know. And so this is why, again, I always say I like the word intelligence over smart. Smart is ego and pride, where, hey, I'm going to sit here and prove to you that I know these things. I'm going to prove to you that I'm smart. No, that's not it. We are intelligent beings. And intelligence then says, hey, you know what? I may not know enough about this. So I'm going to sit back and observe and I'm going to listen. And I am going to learn enough about it to have a proper conversation or a discussion about it. So it says the meaning of communication. So communication is derived from the Latin word communis, which means to make common. So communication, therefore, is an exchange of thoughts, messages, information by ways of speech, signals, and writing. All right. So this leads us back to that. We're going to sit here and take a small break because we're going to go into the next topic, which we want to introduce our guest, Marcus. And so let me sit here and go into the advertisement that we have for the show, which is brought to you by Miscellaneous Staffing here. And Miscellaneous Staffing by Latasha Crawford. She's a certified business development and workforce development. She has jobs all over for some of everybody, not here just in Kansas City. She will be able to help people find a job no matter where they are. If you're a felon, she has jobs for you. If you're a person who you haven't worked in a long time, if you have disability, she has virtual and remote jobs for you. take down her phone number and her email address. And if anyone has any questions about job or job information within their city and their town, she is a person that can get information for you in all 50 states.
Oh, that's amazing.
That is. That's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. She's always expanding. You know, I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna bring her on the show too, so that she can talk about government contracts, because government contracts is something that she does and she specializes in it.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about the interesting part about it that people may not know is that you have to have all of these particular credentials first in order to be even considered. And she
Okay.
is a great person to help walk you through
Mm-hmm.
your your certification process, and actually tell you how many certifications you need to be able to compete for these contracts.
That's amazing. That's just developing
Yes,
another stream of income. Even if you already are employed, that would be amazing to do.
yes, absolutely, absolutely. So she does have another video. I mean, actual advertisement. I'm going to play that at the end because I'm going to get to Marcus so that we can sit here and hear all the things that he has to sit here and share with us.
Yes.
So don't sweat the small stuff. And it's supposed to say, and it does say Richard Carlson, but this is our guest. We have a guest today, Marcus Chilimbwe. And I hope I'm saying it right, Marcus Chilimbwe. Because see, this is the way I had spelt it, and I didn't go back to correct it. That's why I said I was almost right with the spelling of this last name. So if it
It's
is
close enough.
misspelled right. Okay, yeah. I'm gonna say, don't hold my feet to the fire about the spelling. This is the way I spelled it when I was trying to sound it out. Are you able to hear me? Oh,
Yes.
Yes, I can hear you. Yes.
okay. Okay. So this is our book, our new book we're going to be breaking into for the new year, called Don't Sweat the Small Stuff at Work. And Don't Sweat
Mm-hmm.
the Small Stuff at Work is by Richard Carlson. And he's basically just going over a lot of, it's like a to-do list
Mm-hmm.
is what it is. It's like a to-do list, right? And so he has a lots of things where some of these are habits you need to break. Some of these are perspectives you need to change.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you need to be a little bit open-minded, and you also need to forgive yourself in certain areas,
And forgive
knowing
yourself
that
and others.
knowing that you are not perfect, right? We are not
Mm-hmm.
perfect people, and we're gonna make mistakes. So don't sweat it. Move
Yeah,
on,
let it go.
find a
Move
way to
on. Move on.
and move on. That's right.
Keep it
And don't
moving.
sweat the small stuff. So I absolutely love this book. It's about 270 pages. It's a
Mm-hmm.
small book, but it packs a punch. Um, and you can find it on Amazon. Um, you can find it on eBay. This book right here, I've seen it anywhere from $8, and I've seen an original hard copy, about $40, right? For this book right here. This book is much less expensive, less expensive than the last book we introduced. So Carlson presents various practical strategies to lighten up your daily burdens. One key takeaway, he said, is to lower your tolerance for stress. And that is the point of
Mm-hmm.
this, being mindful of what triggers the stress
Mm-hmm.
and shift your focus. Another core idea is to let others have their moment of glory. Stop hating. I'll put that in here, y'all.
Stop hating. You'll get your
Stay
turn
in
when it comes
pursuit of
around.
peace.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, see, I had that mixed around. I don't know what was going on with me with these slides. I see a whole bunch of
Mm-hmm.
errors, and I normally don't have these many errors. So I was distracted.
It
That's the
wasn't
story
me.
I'm taking to it. Yeah, no, it wasn't you this time, but I was definitely distracted. So some of the key concepts here, he says, is perspective. Recognizing that many worries are minor in the grand scheme of things, right? Which is so true. Mindfulness, practicing living in the present,
Mm-hmm.
right? Humility, being modest, allows for growth and understanding. Then there's listening, giving others your full attention while you're communicating. gratitude, regularly acknowledging what you appreciate. Right? I'm going to go through these and then we can get into it how you guys need to. So also some of the key takeaways of the book is trust your instincts, right? Listening to yourself. Be
Mm-hmm.
present, which is saying being connected, right? That's that connection we don't exactly have to everybody that we should have sometimes. Well, we're selective, put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to connection, we're always selective on who we want to be connected to and who we don't want to
Right.
be connected
Associate
to.
with, yeah.
Yeah. Practicing kindness, right? Which is going back to what he was saying, letting others shine, letting others have their moment. It's okay to let everybody win sometimes. It
Mm-hmm.
helps the collective. It helps.
Mm-hmm.
It helps the objective of what you were originally trying to create in the first place. So let others shine. Let others have that moment. It's okay, right? Don't
Mm-hmm.
sweat the small stuff. Keep trivial matters in a proper view. And he used that word trivial on purpose,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then live in the moment. Appreciate the moment for what it is. Now, these
Mm-hmm.
are all things that will help you in your workplace to see your workplace as a place where you can thrive, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to, I hate this place, I hate being here, I hate these people. When is it time to go home? Oh my gosh, I cannot stand. Those kind of things will drive you crazy in
Mm-hmm.
your work environment. And so
Mm-hmm.
we have to sit here and replace all those old thoughts with healthier habits, with healthier thoughts, but it's hard to do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this is why we have Marcus here with us that will be helping us today, because these are some things we really, we really need help with. Because some people really hate their environment; they don't never want to go to work, right? And I get it. I used to be that same way too, when I didn't understand it at all. I used to hate going to
Mm-hmm.
work every single day. So these numbers here, 16 and 30, that's just some of the things um, where he had some of his key takeaways. I'm sorry, these are the actual titles to the chapters that are in the book. Okay, so this will be chapter 16. This will be chapter 30. So he says right here in chapter 16, don't keep people waiting. Respect other people's time. Plan ahead and make sure you're on time all the time, right? Chapter 30, absorb the speed bumps of your day. When problems pop up, consider there are mere speed bumps, and
Mm-hmm.
that should only slow you down temporarily and help you get through the situation so that you can go on your way. Be careful what you ask. Says, believe it or not, your life might actually be good enough as it is. Think over the things that you're wishing for. They might actually happen and cause you even more grief and frustration. Be aware of potentially stress effects of your promises. Limit your promises you make, especially when they're unnecessary and unimportant. At work, this is happening right now. Be careful what you ask for. There's a girl right now who is technically getting fired. She's been at this job forever, but she was beating down those closed doors. I mean, beating them down, kicking them down. The door was closed, bolted, and she still went in there with guns ablazing, and
Mm.
they gave her the position she asked for. Now she is herself in process of getting fired.
Mm.
Okay. So now there's the 2080 rule, and all of these have one thing in common. So this is the last set, and I'm going to put it all together for you. So the 2080 rule states that only 20% of people do 80% of the work in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are part of that 20%, don't take it personally if others are not doing their jobs. Remember that people define productivity in different ways. Absolutely. And make a list of your personal priorities. Write the list of personal things that are important to you. And after a few weeks, go back to your list and check if you were able to accomplish those personal priorities. So, Marcus, this is where you come in at. When they're saying respect other people's time, plan ahead, and when problems pop up, and consider, these are all things that we these are some of these things are complete habits. Respecting other people's time.
Mhm.
I would definitely say that's one of the worst habits that we have, not only in the workplace, but just in general.
Mhm.
And
Well,
so, how are we? So then, Marcus, my question to you is, how are we then to replace any of these bad habits with new ones? How are we to? How does the brain first observe a thing, and then if you want to switch it, how does that work? All how is that mapping out all in the brain to replace some of these old habits with newer ones?
so let me first by saying I appreciate the invite to discuss this. Um, it is a very interesting conversation thus far. I am not an expert. I am an enthusiast on human behavior, right? So I read on, study on, inquire about why humans may behave the way they do and some of the influences and factors involved in how humans behave. So we have to we should always first I took some notes. So some things that were said early on in the show that I wanted to tap onto, then go straight into this habit for me about nonverbal communication. That was the first one. Um, for the most part, from what we can tell, is that nonverbal communication tends to have a higher influence during certain conversations versus other conversations. So if your
I
body
can see
language,
that.
right, if your body language does not match the words coming out your mouth, humans tend to pay attention more to the body language. If they align closely together, then they focus on the words, not seeing any disconnect between the two. Um, and
Mm,
that's basically because most of the time words can be formulated in lies, but body language tends to tell the truth.
mm,
So if they line up together, then you pay attention to the words. If they don't, you tend to look more into the body language, looking for a deeper intent.
yes,
Okay,
that's juicy right there. So
so
you're
that's
saying, so let me stop. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you're basically saying that the words coming out of our mouth can be a lie, but our body will tell the truth every time.
for the most part.
Mm.
For the most part. So you could have a person talking about how lovely you look, but then they look at their face and you can see that they're not telling the truth, or you get the impression. You know what I'm saying? So if you want to be an effective communicator, you should focus on both. Make sure your body language matches the words that are coming out of your mouth. And it creates tension when they don't match
Yeah.
in
Mm,
conversations. Imagination
mm,
and things like that. That is a I believe Dewey asked about that.
Mhm.
That's part of something called the default brain network, which we're going to get into about habits. And if you ever had a conversation in your head, because let's say you're in a business environment and you got to pull in one of the employees and talk about their attendance, right? You may play that conversation in your head prior to that person coming into the room, right? That mechanism is called the default brain network. It works very well in doing those abstract thoughts, and that's also where a lot of imagination and creativity come from. Um, and so that's where that comes from. For the most part, it's
mm,
called the default brain network. And the key about that is the default. We as human beings switch between it, but we spend a lot. We spend a quite a bit of time using that default brain network. So imagine you get up every morning to go to work, and this time you get up in the morning and you wanted to stop and get breakfast, right? And you're driving along, and before you know it, you're at your job and you never stop to get breakfast. That's the default brain network, right? It's the habitual habits that develop in a person that they continue to do over and over again, right? But it's also brings
mm,
about abstract thought. Okay, abstract thoughts and conversations. Um, And so that's those two things that I wanted to tap on while y'all were talking about communication. I think it's very important.
No, that's good because you saying that default brain network, or did you say default network? You said default brain network, right?
Correct.
Okay, so those are maybe habits or things that we formulate as a child, or throughout, or what are our journey through life, whatever
Through life.
you've seen along the way. Pick up habits
Yeah.
sometimes from other people. You know, if you and let me put it to you, let me throw it back to you in a workforce environment. Hey, they're late for work. They're late off of their breaks. So I'm gonna be late for mine too. No one's checking on them to see if they actually took 15 minutes or 25 minutes from a break. So I'm just
That
gonna develop a system, that says, hey, they're late, they can do it, I can do it too, right?
Yeah, but that's not really habits. That's a cultural thing, right? So
Mm-hmm.
humans evolved in social environments, and there's sections or behavior patterns that kind of mesh along. So if you go into an environment, and this is the environmental behavior, you tend to copy what you see around you to
Mm-hmm.
get along, to go along, right? Um, and that can become habitual, right? But it's actually an environmental influence. One study they did in a dentist office where they would the study participant was an individual, and everybody sitting in the office was part of it, and they would ring a bell, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody would stand up, right? And
Mm-hmm.
the new person that came in would stay seated. And about the third or fourth time, they would then begin to stand up,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because everybody else is doing it. They don't know why, but just because everybody else is doing it. Then um, the participant, the people that run in the study, one by one would leave, and
Mm-hmm.
new people would come up, so that everybody in the original one is gone, and everybody there now is new, and they still stand up. That's part of how humans behave, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you go to a job and everybody, the workplace I work in, everybody takes about 40-45 minutes for lunch, right? Though it's only supposed to be 30 minutes, right? A new employee come in, I can do my orientation with them and say, hey, lunch is 30 minutes, you got to be here. And within 2 weeks, they're doing a 40-45 minute because everybody else is doing it with them, right? But that's not a habitual thing. That's a cultural thing that
Mm-hmm.
can become habitual,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's good to
And the
control the
factors
environment.
around the factors around the work environment is influencing that person to do what they do.
Right, do what everybody else is doing, and that
Yeah.
is a evolutionary process, right? That's how you can imagine yourself on the plains of Africa, and you have group cohesion
Mm-hmm.
in order to survive. So you evolve these mechanisms. So that's just how they look at it from a science point of view,
Yeah.
right? So
Chilimwe, this is Rassha. You were talking about the default brain and how we do things basically on autopilot, or we're thinking about doing something and then we just go into this, I guess, where we just operating just off of what we normally do. So when we're handling a situation where we're talking to someone or going to prepare to talk to someone about their absenteeism, and we're preparing to discuss with them, we're trying to figure out what may or may not happen or how we're going to deliver our message to them. What is a good way of preparing yourself, if if you're trying to develop your default brain?
I will get to that
Okay.
in a hot second. That's
Okay.
actually going to be
Okay.
in one of the slides that'll give you
Okay. Okay.
some
So
contextual things with it.
let me take this down then. Let me take these down because I want you to remember these right here, right? Because even right here where it's like absorb the speed bumps of the day. Hey, that depends on an intrinsic mechanism. If I have some tools to deal with stress or not deal with stress, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I may have some things in there that may not allow me to absorb the blow of whatever you just hit me with.
Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about that too, with that mental process of absorbing the bumps as well. And I'm thinking about when people are driving their vehicles, yeah, there's some bumps in the road, but that doesn't stop the vehicle from going to its destination.
True. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's some there's a little bit more to it for sure. This
But
is
this is
why we
great.
wanted to
This
sit
is
here
good
and talk.
information. So
Yeah, that's why I
we
wanted to
trying
break
to
this
do
down
these
for the
things.
new year so that we can
Yeah.
kind of change some of these habits, kind of
Yes.
switch up the way we've been doing things, and that would allow us
And
to be just a
understand.
little bit better than what we were before. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Marcus, so the screen is yours. Go ahead.
I should be sharing it. Can you see me sharing my screen?
Yeah. Hold on. That's me. Okay.
There you
There
go.
we go.
Okay, so I put a small thing together. I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to give you some definitions, and then we're going to get into some steps about how habits are formed. And there's going to come to a section in which I'm going to discuss some of the dangers of forming habits, and that's when I will answer Rassha your question. Okay.
Okay.
So let's start with just a clear definition. What is a habit, right? So we want to understand what it is so we understand how they form, right? A settled tendency or usual manner of behavior, right? An acquired mode of behavior that has become nearly or completely involuntary. There goes that default brain network action. A behavior pattern acquired by frequent repetition or physiological exposure that shows itself in regularity or increased facility or performance. So that's basically what a habit is. It is a shift between two networks in the brain happening at one time, right? So when you are intentional, mindfulness, a certain brain network happens, developing a habit, and then there's going to come a point in time in which you're no longer being mindful and intentional in the habit, developing the habit. That habit has moved on to another brain network and it becomes almost involuntarily. It's just a natural occurrence.
Okay.
How do humans form habits? Which is a great question. The process that involves repetition, reinforcement, and brain mechanisms, initially conscious and goal directed actions, are guided by the prefrontal cortex. That's one section of the brain. Over time, repeated behaviors shift control to the basal ganglia and the striatum, making them automatic depending on the complexity. It could take somewhere between 18 and 254 days. So if you're trying to develop a simple habit such as flossing before you brush your teeth, it may not take as long for that to become habitual. But if you're trying to develop a habit of maybe going to the gym and exercising and doing 30 minutes of cardio, because that require more steps, it may take longer for it to become habitual.
Okay. That makes sense.
Wow.
Okay.
Now, could I ask a real quick question? Just real quick.
Sure.
The prefrontal cortex is in the front, and the basal ganglia, is that in the stratum? Is that in the back of
it's
in the
it's
front?
it's closer to the center brain.
Okay.
In
the middle.
It is close to the brain stem. I actually have a picture of it right here.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And so the prefrontal cortex is the forehead area of the brain.
Right.
And as you can see, the basal ganglia is more the center brain. And then you can see there's fibers that lead into what they call the lower brain mechanism, which is the spinal cord area, the brain stem. Okay. One of the key components to the basal ganglia is this thing called the amygdala. If you ever heard of the fight or flight mechanism, that's where that is one of the key components. So I'm not going to say it's all there, but it's a key component to that mechanism. Okay. And so that lets you know that this is involving in some ways perceptions of danger, perceptions of reward systems, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Okay. So the basal ganglia, although they play a key role in action selection, aid in the choice of behaviors to execute. More specifically, they regulate motor and premotor cortical areas, facilitating smooth voluntary movement. So basically, the basal ganglia is tied to the motions of habitual behavior. right? So why do you know that when you reach for a cup you're gonna grasp that cup by uh, folding your forefingers together, right?
Right.
Right. So that's the voluntarily motions that they're talking about, but it's also part of the memory system, which is where the habitual come in. The
Mhm.
key to that is that it's both dependent on dopamine. Okay,
Yes.
dopamine is your reward system.
Hmm.
So
Mm.
for a fat kid that love cake,
Watch it now.
this is a pineapple upside down cake. You understand what I'm saying?
Talking my
Like,
language now.
Watch it
yeah,
now.
it goes hand in hand together with that right there.
Yes.
Dopamine is the quick system or reward system for the brain.
Okay.
Okay. And so many behaviors are dopamine dependent. There are certain variations and variants that can shift the effectiveness of dopamine, but overall, dopamine is there. If you ever look at somebody with Parkinson's disease,
Hmm.
Parkinson's disease is actually part of that dopamine system,
Okay.
most of them voluntary. So when you have a breakdown in that system, that's what you see with Parkinson's. Okay.
Yes.
I hope everybody's following along good
Well,
with
we
me.
are we
Oh
following?
yeah.
Following.
Oh yeah.
I
Yeah.
was going to
This is
ask you
good.
a real quick question about
Sure.
um, developing the award system. So let's say if you're in a position where you have to do a lot of things and it can get overwhelming to you, answering emails, answering colleagues' questions, working on forms. It's a lot of things, moving parts. Trying to develop something that gives your brain dopamine so that you don't get overwhelmed and just fold. So just
Well,
celebrating small victories or things that you're doing throughout the course of the day, could that help?
yes. So there's two things you have to be mindful of. One is that there's only 24 hours in a day,
That's true.
right? And so you can't do everything all the time. And so
Mhm.
you have to
Clearly. Yeah.
you have to set aside time for um, rest,
Mhm.
times for mindfulness. And then there's little things that you get rewards from that you can have. So
Mhm.
sometimes when I'm in we do audits,
Mhm.
when I'm involving audits and things like that, we tend to do rewards for passing the audit.
Mhm.
This encourages people to do things slightly different, look forward to it, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a lot of different ways you can reward yourself. So taking the small steps, which we're gonna get to,
Okay.
taking the small steps and taking those longer processes and shorten them down, and then rewarding yourself after successful completions can play a great role in developing healthy
Mhm.
habits.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. Okay. So habit loops dopamine. This is how you can strengthen some habits, right? Process is driven by a habit loop consisting of 4 steps: cue, craving, response, and reward, which reinforces neurological neural pathways, right? So, like I was saying, the default brain network, if you set cues for it, so you say, okay, we used to do it back in the day as children, right? Y'all come in the house when the street lights come on,
Right.
right? That's a
Yeah.
cue. That's the cue. When you see the street lights come on, right? You need to get home. Now, most time parents either say it's almost dinner time or it's time to do this. And then you don't want the punishments of not being there. That's sort of like the crave inspection,
Mhm.
right? You see it, you like cross it, you take the possibility of whatever may come from that, and you respond. Based on
Mhm.
that response, you go home, and then you look for the reward, which is I don't get smacked upside the head, I don't get this
Ah,
done, I'm living my best life, right? Okay. So that's the overall habit loop, and so it becomes habitual. Now, if you're talking
yes.
about a workplace, you want to do that in a smaller scale, right? What's the
Right.
cue? 9 o'clock beating, it may
Yeah.
be a bad.
I want to hold on. Let me interrupt you there. So that was what I was going to bring up. So that cue, because earlier in the book, he mentioned, understanding the triggers as to, and the way your response based upon the triggers. find out, pay attention to the triggers that the responses that trigger your stress. So is that the same thing? Can we
Yes,
consider
that's a
that as a
cue.
cue?
That's a cue. So I have certain words. I be on YouTube and social media sometimes, and certain things trigger me, and I just get offline because I already know it's about to escalate. So I know these cues, right? And so when I see those cues or hear those cues, I know it's about to go someplace I don't want it to go. So
Yeah,
I
it's
just
just go down.
remove myself, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
But that requires self-reflection for you to know what the cues are, right?
Mm-hmm.
So some people go through their lives never knowing what their cues are, and then they're tossed to and fro, easily agitated and filled with stress, right? Just because you don't recognize those cues. Okay, so that's the science of habitual habit developing and rewiring your brain for it. You need both the cue, the response, and the reward in order for it to completely begin to network. This is called plasticity. Your brain is plastic in the sense that neurological networks are constantly being redesigned, rehatched, and improved. It's like a continual improvement your brain works on. Cultural habits and caution. So now we're going to get into some of that. The great grandmother, grandmother, mother, and daughter. So this is one of the stories that I tend to use when I'm trying to explain cultural habits and how they can be maladaptive because the environments change. So you have a dinner that's being prepared, and the great granddaughter sitting there talking to her mother. So the daughter is talking to her mother, and she says, "Why do we cut the edges off the chicken legs?" And the mother says, "Well, that's just because that's what my mother did. Go ask your grandmother." And so the little girl goes ask the grandmother, and the grandmother says, she asks us, "Why do you cut the edges off the chicken legs?" And the grandmother says, "Well, that's just how I learned it. That's what I always did. Go ask your great grandmother." So she strolls on over and asks the great grandmother, great grandmom, whatever she calls her now, mom, "Why do you cut the legs off the edge of the chicken?" And she says, "Child, that's because the pan was too small."
The baby had enough fortitude to ask the question why. So
correct.
that's why
kid is going to always ask
why.
questions. Yeah.
Right, but people don't know the what. What are we doing and why are we doing it? They're not making that connection, just like this child just did. That's amazing.
Yeah, because connections are important, especially in our workforce environment. I'm telling you, when I was flunking out of college, right, and I wasn't making the connection with the teacher.
Mhm.
I don't care how far, how much, I listened to her. I didn't understand what she was saying for whatever reasons, and it had it not been for the note taker, that I was paying to help me with notes, I wouldn't have made it through class. And it's just real simple.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was connections are important.
Right, because there was a study that when you study by yourself, you only have one side of it. But if you're studying with a group, you have multiple facets of what is being discussed, and you're able to have a dialogue to process it better, because it takes a little bit longer for one person to process than a group to process.
Absolutely. There's your question, Rassha.
Okay.
So as we can see, sometimes what happens in life is that we develop habits and we don't know the actual reasons why.
Mm-hmm.
We don't understand why. We don't do the self-reflection, and we don't ask questions on why is this behavior there. So
yes.
Sometimes in a business environment, it's the corporate culture that is driving individuals to respond that way. And sometimes individuals bring their own baggage with them, their own
say that
with them, right?
Yes.
It's you have different personalities, different variations of human beings, different minds created by a blueprint of a brain. Mm-hmm. And so it can be difficult to do some things, but these are general strategies that I'm talking about. It's not this fits perfectly for everybody.
Right.
Because you may have individuals who have different different mechanisms, same mechanisms, but different ways those mechanisms manifest in behaviors
Like,
that
yeah.
can cause some differences, right? So this is just very general. And again, I am not an expert. I'm just an enthusiast on human behavior.
All right.
Okay. All right.
These
Okay.
answers are
Yeah.
absolutely fantabulous. Yeah, because especially when you're in leadership at work, and leadership goes for if you are a manager, if you are the supervisor, if you are the lead, if you are the foreman, if you are the, whatever it is, you need to have a little bit of psychological understanding about the way we work and we function. It just helps you in your workplace overall get along with people you might not have. It helps. It just helps the overall work situation when you're able to understand the psychological piece of how human beings work.
And I think there was a question in the chat, Chilimwe. How does one prepare to deliver the message that their employees are not carrying their weight on the
Yeah,
job?
I saw that. We were going to answer that after Marcus
Okay.
finishes.
Yeah, I got him. I see Joel. A matter of fact, let me shout out my folks. Peace to the pseudo killers and the pseudo killer army. I appreciate y'all coming through. Um, Joel is a pseudo killer army member, so he's accustomed to these type of things. I'm gonna get to his question as best as we can, but I wanted to make sure I
Yeah,
acknowledge
and I
those
think,
in
and
the
I think,
chat.
and I don't think he was asking you that question, Marcus. I think he was asking us that question because we're all, and true enough, we're all in the workforce. So I think we can, between us all, we can all answer that question kind of effectively and get him some, and get other supervisors some other questions, because this, we talk about this stuff quite a bit. How do we get
Yes.
people to be in compliance at work? It's not an easy job, but again, understanding the psychological piece puts a brand new, puts a whole nother perspective in play towards how we treat our coworkers at work, right?
Yes.
Absolutely. So let's get into some of the ways we can tone down the news noise. Now, this has become very, very important due to the advancements of technology.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Sometimes what happens is that we developed mechanisms, networks, and behavior patterns
Mm-hmm.
that are in one environment and they're conducive and productive and effective, but in different environments produce different results. So with the mechanisms that we evolved, communication, social behavior patterns, um, some of that can be manipulated through social media, these apps, and causing us to be distracted
Right.
much more than is necessary, right? On the plains, on the forest hills, on the expansion of us coming out of Africa 60,000 years ago, the main migration that is representative of all people today. Um, these behaviors have become, in some ways, easily manipulated by
Mm-hmm.
commercialism. A prime example is um, we evolved a hunger for fatty foods and sugars, right? Because it was um, limited in the environment in which we developed these traits. And so there's a drive for us to seek out sugars and fats for survival. But today, those same sugars and fats are readily available, but the cravings are still there.
Mm-hmm.
And so people tend to overeat,
Right.
et cetera, et cetera. That becomes maladaptive. Um, so one of the things we got to work on is trying to limit some of those distractions that develop due to the advancements of technology. So turn off noise distractions, and then we're going to do several effective strategies. Digital strategies, these are things that you want to deal with in those environments. I was just talking about social media, phones, and all like that. Delete distracting apps from your phone. I don't personally allow notifications for like some of the gaming things that I do. some of the social media things, so my phone isn't constantly buzzing with people things that are trending, right? So it can help me with my focus. Again, there it is. Turn off notifications on smartphone and desktop applications. Again, give yourself that mindful time. Close unnecessary browser tabs. Don't load up your screen with a bunch of YouTube videos and Twitter streams and all like that. Things that are favors for you, right? So if you love certain Facebook groups or something like that, limit that. Turn it off for a few hours so you can get that reset and rest that you need. Limit email and social media checks. Again, you turn off the notification. That'll mean you go every 2 minutes and check your email to see who messaged you. Right? These things can cause disruptions and help building healthy habit, habitual behavior. Then you got mental
focus.
Absolutely. Mental techniques that can be used. Practice meditation by sitting quietly, focus on breathing. This is a new thing that's coming throughout the science world, especially with behavioralism and psychology. And what they're talking about is that default brain network. People who tend to take time to quiet their surroundings tend to have a more controlled default brain network. When the default brain network runs wild, we now refer to that as one of the conditions of anxiety.
Chilimwe, I was going to say this is not new to a lot of us in our community, because I remember the elders would make us sit down and say quiet time.
Yeah, exactly.
And they would make us sit down and be quiet. So this is nothing new. This is just something that they're discovering that we've been having all along.
And we developed it in churches. So you go to
Yes.
the kid as a church,
Yes,
hard to sit and pay attention, right?
That's right.
But then you have
I would be interested in. I'm sorry. I would be interested in hearing some of the new techniques, some of the new discovery that they come up with, because again, it's not old. It's something that we do, but I would be very interested in hearing how science has now, factored in inclusion of this type of those type of practices, especially in the workplace. And I would be interested to know how effective they are.
Sure, I can give you some sources on that. A lot of that came from, I think, Huberman Lab. He has a YouTube show that he does very big with that. And then Lex Friedman did a couple shows on it. But I can give y'all some source. Sam Harris also talks about mindfulness and meditation. And basically what it is, like I said, you do through rumination. That's what it's called, where your brain is constantly calculating and attempting to perform things through the default network. Imagining old conversations, imagining new conversations. And so you take these things and you use a technique that is mindfulness to try to quiet that noise. And it from what we can tell so far, it can be a very effective tool to people dealing with stress and anxiety.
You got to be careful with that rumination, because it needs to be positive, not negative.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. You can't really control rumination.
Yeah.
That's one of the main issues. So the easiest solution they came up with so far is to use techniques like the mindfulness I was talking about, and then music. Music is also a method that they use to try to control that rumination. And rumination can control perceptive. So I mean, it can get very complicated, but that's one of the areas in which they're definitely coming up with more information.
Which is nice. I'm glad they're doing that, because the workforce is a diverse place, and people need different tools and resources to help people get through their day, let alone get through their week, get through their month, get through the year.
Yeah, well, our job uses what they call rest and relaxation time. Sometimes they bring in masseuse, sometimes they bring in exercise. I mean, they do a lot of things to help people to relieve stress throughout the workday. So
that's nice.
Yeah, that's at the main branch in Portland. I work at a subsidiary in Chester, but yeah, they have that type stuff. It's been delayed because of the pandemic we went through, but it's being re-implemented.
Oh, good.
Another mental, use visual reminders like sticky notes to stay focused. Great idea. We use our five senses to relay the world around us. Your brain is in a box, and these five senses help communicate the world around you. Visual aids, especially like if you're reading or something like that, reading out loud and reading with your eyes can help retain information, etc. But the visual reminders can tend to keep your brain focused and stop it from going into that daydreaming state. Take short time breaks every hour to reset your mind. We talked about that already. You can become bombarded throughout the day. Make sure you take time out, even if it's just 3 to 5 minutes of just taking a deep breath and relaxing. Find a quiet workspace without Wi-Fi. Again, this is just a method to quiet down some of the distractions that are coming through the advancements in technology. Then set specific times for checking communication. So this will help control your time a little bit better throughout your day, right?
Yes.
Environmental approaches to help build these things up. Creating a comfortable work environment. I'm sure y'all all aware of that. Choose a location with minimum interruptions. Use noise canceling headphones. Read physical books to reduce screen time. Eat meals without devices. Now, this is not only things you can do at your home, but also in your workplace to try to bring about a more mindful behavior pattern so that you can begin to develop healthy habits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Now we get into the actual mindfulness practices. Practice counting or breathing exercises. Develop daily plans the night before. Set clear and smaller goals. Ensure adequate sleep. And then reward yourself after completing tasks. Mm-hmm. Right? Getting started for actual building healthy habits. Define and purpose goals, clear plans. Keep a clear plan. Use a habit stacking. Attach new habits to old ones. So this is very important. So let's say you already have a habit of checking your email at 8 a.m. Right? It would be easier for you to develop a habit of mindfulness if you attach it to after email, I go to the water cooler. Right? You're more likely to remember that and more likely to develop that healthy habit if it's attached to one thing you're already doing habitual, such as brushing your teeth. You say, okay, I want to brush my teeth, but after I brush my teeth, I want to sit and read a book for 10, 15 minutes. You're more likely to be able to continue that habit if you connect it to brushing your teeth and not just a random time.
Okay.
And so it's gradually too, right? So it's all gradual as well.
Depending on the complexity of it, it can take 18 to 200 and some odd days.
I know. I wanted to go back into that. We are going to go back into that. Is like, wow. That's a wow.
And then the next step is you want to track your progress and be accountable. So if you're on a diet or something like that, check your progress and be held accountable for when you fail in some task or goal that you're trying to do, some habits you're trying to develop and change. And then reward success. So if your goal is 25 pounds or your goal is this and you accomplish that goal, treat yourself to something nice. Now, not no cake now. Maybe it's a new pair of shoes or anything like that. Something that activates that dopamine network that can be connected to your patterns of behavior so that your brain then begins to habituate those behaviors, anticipating the reward that come later. Okay? And so that's it. That's a quick overview of where we at in the science now. I'm sure some people may have some questions or anything like that. I appreciate y'all giving me the time to share where we at right now in the scientific area.
Well, to Linway, this was some amazing information.
Yeah,
and I'm going to
start. Yeah, this was definitely an eye over.
I'm going to start.
That was great.
Yes.
So go ahead, Dewey. And I know Dewey's been quiet the longest. So Dewey, I know he has some questions and things he want to sit here and discuss. Go ahead, Dewey.
Okay. Yeah, because I was thinking about this while I was listening to Marcus go through the slides and and all that. Okay, we talk about habits. Okay, I'm curious why do some people have, like, let's say, drug habits, alcohol habits, overeating habits, uh, sexually promiscuous habits, and then there are people that are the opposite, that have very healthy habits. They don't smoke, they don't drink, they don't do drugs, they eat right, they exercise, they get their rest, they drink plenty of water, have a good diet, and all that stuff. Why? I mean, if you was like if I was to ask you what is the contrast between the two of, like, those with good habits and those with bad habits, what would you tell me, Marcus?
Perception and the reward system.
Okay.
So drugs tends to okay. So let me say this. I'm going to avoid getting into high technical information. I'm gonna try to keep it as
you can find a happy medium.
Okay. So your dopamine reward system,
Dopamine,
right?
Yes.
Can be manipulated by outside sources.
Okay.
So if you use cocaine, right? Cocaine has an inhibitor. So what it does is it actually prevents dopamine uptake. So it floods your system with dopamine, and that's that high that you get.
The rush,
right?
The rush.
Right. But there's a limit to how much dopamine your body can produce at a time. And so that's that crash afterwards.
Right.
And then they chase that again. Right. So then that becomes a habitual thing about habits, right? And it's hard to, what ends up happening is you require more and more of that original stimuli to produce similar feelings of that dopamine rush.
Wow.
Right. Okay. And so that's one of the negative effects, but people's perception. So you can exercise, and exercise releases dopamine also.
Yeah.
Right. Sure. And so, but it's a more controlled release. And so you don't have as much of that rush and crash as you had before. And it's more manageable. And so these are different ways of your perceived reward system can affect both outcomes. Then there's natural mechanisms that base on that. So sugar and sexual relations have evolutionary processes involved to it, right? Yeah. And then that can be extremely manipulated. So you come from small bands without a lot of people, generally speaking, and then you come into an environment where there's much more people. That's much more stimuli, and then that stimuli in some people can cause disruptions in that reward system, and they become addicted to sex or pornographic material and things like that.
Okay. Well, thank you, Marcus. Yeah, because we, like I said, we're on the subject of habits, and it's kind of like, looking at the slides, you went into detail about the parts of the brain and dopamine and other things, but like I said, there are people that do have drug habits, alcohol habits, and smoking cigarette habits, and on and on. Then there are people totally the opposite that don't have any of those. So you have good habits and you got bad habits.
Well, and not to mention too that people bring those habits to work, right? So people bring those habits to work with them, and then we still have to find a proper workaround to, work with these people and get along with these people in your workplace, and so people are going to do it if they're stressed. A lot of people do tip. A lot of people tip outside to the employee parking lot all the time and drink, right? I mean, like literally all the time. So they may not, and you can smoke freely, but we've the alcohol, what people don't seem to understand is that as great as some people are, sometimes the alcohol can influence their behavior and what they will say. So, to be mindful sometimes and not to take things personal, because we don't know what's going on in people's lives.
It's true. That is true.
Right? And so, we don't want to sit here and be judgmental versus we want to, have a proper workaround to deal with people with said behaviors.
Okay, Marcus. I also wanted to ask. Now we talk about habits. I've seen this posted on social media. I've seen it on Yahoo Lifestyle. I've even maybe read it in my. I have like a library of like self-help books and all that. Okay, it's been said that people that build wealth, they develop certain habits that people that do not that never do build wealth, they never develop those habits. So it's been said that people, I don't think it's true for everybody that ever became wealthy, but they said for the most part, a lot of people that do build wealth, they have certain habits that they follow that people that never do build wealth don't follow. What would you say to that?
That's a cultural thing. Remember the story I said about the grandmom, great grandmom?
Yeah, right.
That's
about
a cultural thing.
Yeah.
Right. And so some ways we develop cultural habits, familiar habits that aren't positive in the environment we're in. A prime example is 1860s. They had 1866. They started the Freedmen Bank, and the Freedmen Bank ended up going under due to mismanagement.
They say.
They say, right? And so after that, for about the next 60 years, African Americans didn't want to put money in the bank. And so the interest compilation that they missed out for that is gone. You can't go back and get it.
Right.
Though that habit developed out of a understanding of caution, right? Right. It has long-term implications.
Yeah.
And so sometimes the environment we're in and our experiences causes us to develop unhealthy habits when it concerns things like money, food. I love soul food. I do. I trust me when I tell you I love it. I have a problem. I got some old moms at my job that bring me soul food all the time. Right? But I got gout. So I got to be careful. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So in that case, our cultural is now becoming maladaptive to me because it causes my legs to swell. See what I'm saying? And so these are just things that we have to be mindful of, understand, and then look at ways we can minimize the impact of these negative habits, and or get rid of these negative habits.
And like you said, Marcus, they can be environmental, and and see, the thing is, as far as opportunities too. I mean, there are people that do reach a high level of success because they are afforded opportunities other people are not afforded. So not to make excuses as to why I can't become successful in life and why I can't make it. But let's face it. Now, hopefully I ain't getting off subject, but I think there are people where, let's face it, they come from already wealthy backgrounds and influential. They're surrounded by big name influential people from birth. So the pathway to success is laid out for them. And not everybody have those type of opportunities to make it in life. And then there are people, we hear about the rags to riches story. There are people who come from nothing, who become great people and do great things and build these great empires and everything. So, but I think habits do play a big part. You have to, and one of the main habits that I've seen posted a lot on this one page on Facebook that's kind of like talk about being successful. It talks about how you have to have discipline. A lot of people who develop great habits, they have discipline, and discipline, I think, is one of the key things.
Yeah, self-control and self-discipline.
There you go. That's right, LaShawn. Yeah, self-control, having self-control. So what do you say that, Marcus?
So that's the prefrontal cortex. Remember we talked about that?
Oh, yeah.
That's actually what they consider to be the what is the term they like to use? The executive function of the brain, right? And so when we talk about those things like self-control, inhibition, That's mostly the prefrontal cortex, but we got to understand that that's also the most sensitive to environmental influences.
That's right.
Right. So while it is in essence that self-control that we look at between one another, it is so heavily influenced by environmental factors. So if there's evidence that shows that if while you're in your mother's womb, if she doesn't get enough nutrients in certain time periods, you can have a prefrontal cortex that's somewhat underdeveloped.
Right.
Wow.
That's called the Dutch hunger winter study. So they during World War II, the Germans
experimented with.
No, they did a food embargo. They embargoed the Dutch at that time, not letting resources and food come in. And so women who were pregnant during that time, they see that there's some mechanisms within the children now.
Wow.
That affected in one of those areas that was heavily affected is the prefrontal cortex. And so that's one of the evidence. There's also a case study in Eastern Europe with Romania orphan study and another case study in China. So and so that's what this shows. So what I think we need to recognize is that they're individuals with individual experiences. And there may not be one set way to address all those individuals. But there's general things that humans tend to enjoy, right? They enjoy compliments, right? So if you're in a workplace and the person does a good job, you want to acknowledge that, right?
Definitely.
People want their acknowledgement, they're doing well. One of the issues we have with one of the managers at our job is he would only talk to employees when they were doing something wrong.
Right.
And so what that bred was some animosity, right? He ended up retiring, and we got another young lady in a job now who's in the same position, and her output is so much greater than what it was prior to her coming there. And one of the main reasons is she has effective communication, and she overwhelmingly encourages and congratulates a job well done. And one of the things, the cards that her employees fill out and say is she's easy to talk to, right? She acknowledges when I do well. Like, so we know that that's associated with that.
Right. Which makes sense because you got to make a deposit before you make a debit, take something away.
And since
before you make a withdrawal.
Withdrawal,
And since compliments are a reward system, that's one of the ways you can encourage those rewards. Remember, we talked about to build healthy habits.
Right.
Yes.
So acknowledging a job well done can be a reward.
Yes.
Absolutely. It's so interesting that you brought up that, for your perspectives and your mindfulness, some of the things that you were saying that can help with all of this. This book is from 1998. And even back then, they knew that some of these things would help. And so, Marcus, what you have done is just, and I'm so glad that I included you in this conversation, is to point out some of the factors that from 1998 all the way to 2025 that still is affecting us and still have ramifications in the workplace environment on the psychological level. Okay. So a few of the things that you brought up was this right here, right? And here he says, now this is him, right? This is actually a chapter in the book. Have some no phone time. Excessive phone calls can cause a lot of stress and anxiety. Might be a good idea to turn off your ringer or have a voicemail, which we don't use voicemail anymore, but have a voicemail, answer your calls for a specific period of time. That's one of the solutions that you brought to us today was to dial down that phone time.
Right.
Put it on off or put it on, no disturb at this time. You said to have a specific time, right? That you answer your phone calls. This is what he says in 1998, right? Let it go to voicemail and have a specific period of time, right? Also, one of the things that you brought up, and which this is one thing for me. This is huge. Stop anticipating tiredness. Right? Don't anticipate how tired you're going to be tomorrow or at the end of the week. Instead, just take advantage of any chance you get to rest or sleep. That was my favorite one out of all this. I probably read that 1,050 million billion times. Right? Okay. Another thing that you said was to towards the end here, right? Remember to acknowledge, right? You said the young lady had,
better output.
She was, her output was more effective because she had, certain characteristics about herself. And you brought up acknowledging. 1998, here he goes, right? Everyone loves to be acknowledged, so always find the time to acknowledge others. And back then, they did the thing like a simple note or a simple act of saying thank you can do wonders. And you said, and your solution to us was meditation, right? Meditating would be effective. There's some new science and some new studies that show how music and other things can sit here and play a great day. Here's another one that she brought up. Brighten up your work environment. Make sure that your working environment is not bland, boring, or dark. Take the time to spend a little money on making your workplace less depressing. Marcus, you hit the nail on the head when you said that earlier, when you mentioned that earlier about, your workspace and your environment and how important that is to being conducive or having a conducive learning environment or environment where a welcoming environment. I'll use that one, a conducive, welcoming environment. Right? You also said, told us to, make some lists, take some time to, prioritize, things at work. Same thing he thought too. Write a list of personal things that are important to you. And after a few weeks, go back to that list and check to see if you were able to accomplish your personal priorities. We already know we're on that 18 through 200, and did you say 34 day? 234 days it would take to recreate a new habit. I think he said that 234 was 18, anywhere from 18 days. Did you say 234, Marcus?
Sorry, I was on mute. 254.
254. Okay. Yeah. 254 days that it would take to recreate a new habit. So making a list of your personal priorities, going back to check that list to see if you were able to accomplish it. Something about accomplishments to actually boost our confidence in the workplace.
And then don't forget the habit stacking.
And the habit stacking. That's what he said. Yes.
That's my personal takeaway for today. I've been converted.
Yes, habit stacking.
I'm gonna do that habit stacking.
Yes, right? Habit stacking. And, and again, this right here, what I'm showing you, this is where people were with their thought process in the work environment in 1998. It's amazing to see how some of these things never changed. We still have some of these exact same environmental factors and influences. We still have some of these same habits, some of these things that are destructive to us in the environment. And that's why I thought it would be a great idea when I went through the whole thing and was reading it all, like, wow, how do we go into 2025 breaking some of these habits, right? And the first thing I thought about was first about understanding the mind. So Marcus, I want to thank you for bringing that short piece into about helping us understand, the brain and how it even, how it even formulates these processes and thoughts from the beginning. But this is why I'm going back over this right here because I wanted to show you the correlation between what he thought about, what they were thinking about in 1998 and what you're saying now as it pertains to when you're saying science now has, had enough study, enough information to make these things more relevant in our workplace today. Let's see. Okay. And so that was it. So they had about 32 of those things. But I wanted to sit here and just show y'all that how the past affects the present, which affects the
Yes.
future. We're going into right now
Yes.
a time where we need better resources, better understanding about how some things work so we can stop repeating them. So it's time to get off that hamster wheel.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's time to
Yes.
get off that hamster wheel.
Yes.
And we spend lots of times, and one of the main reasons why work is a constant theme is because we spend just as much time at work as we do home.
Probably more.
So
Yeah.
it matters. It matters what's happening to us there, and it matters how we see things there, because there are lots of influences and lots of factors at work. Lord forbid
Yes.
a person is spending 12 hours a day in the work environment. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Look at how many, there's lots of things influencing that. So it's 12 hours a day, 10 or 12 hours a day at work, a few hours at home, a few minutes to eat, and even less to sit here and drink. And then we have to sit here and balance this and make it all work. So we bring up these types of conversations because they matter. People are spending equally amount of time at work and home just the same, and then trying to balance family somewhere in between there.
And if you're going to be in that environment, you definitely want to maximize your talents, your skills, developing yourself so you can move on to the next level.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's what we want to do for 2025. We want to level up. Rassha, you
Exactly.
said that right and exact. It's
But
time to level up.
Chilimwe,
It's time to step up our
it
game.
is level up. So Chilimwe, we thank you for all of the wonderful information that you presented today. And another day or another
Thank you so
time, we
much.
go into these cues that you gave us, because I believe that the cue is what makes you do what you do when you hear those cues. So we need to really go in depth into that and try to break some of those things that old I think you were talking about mal indicators or mal enablers can cause you to do things that is counterproductive. So that would be interesting for you to come back with us at some point. I guess this is a unofficial invite back, but I truly enjoyed our
It's safe
conversation
to say,
today.
Marcus, you were here.
Yes.
At least on our
Amazing.
channel, anyways,
Dewey,
right? Because we
you
love
doing
these
what
kinds
you
these
do.
kind of conversations, yeah. And we're always making,
Gemini, just own
healthy
it.
connections, yeah, with
Yes.
with people, places, and things as it pertains to our work environment. Our work environment again is
Yes,
very
indeed.
important. It is the second place we spend the longest time at, if not the first place, for a lot of our men.
And
And
we need to
so
maximize it.
for a man to be, given another man
Yes.
tools and resources, basic things that he can do, something within his reach, because if it's too
Yes.
complicated, then it's going to throw you off. But if it's just enough, like music and meditation, making sure that, when you are taking those breaks. That was another thing he said too. Make sure you take your breaks. When you're taking your breaks, how to make the most of your breaks, things like that. It matters,
Yes.
and understanding why the brain takes these things, to mean what they mean when
Right.
it brings it back to yourself. So thank you, Marcus. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
you
Thank
being
you.
here
Thank you.
so
Thank you,
much.
Marcus. We appreciate it.
Yes.
Very enlightening.
Yes.
You're
Yes.
welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah, I learned a lot today.
You had me at pineapple upside down cake.
Hey, Sakina's in the chat. She must be feeling
Hi,
a little bit
Sakina.
better.
I thank
So
y'all
any
for the
last words?
invite.
We're gonna sit
Yes.
here and so let's close out with this thing. So Rassha, we're gonna start with you and end with Marcus for the closeout.
Communication is key. If you definitely want to get your point across, make sure you're working on your delivery. Make sure you are in control of your thoughts. Make sure you have the end goal of the conversation in mind and do not get distracted, and keep your head up. Level up for 2025. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Dewey, go ahead.
Well, like I said, this conversation was very enlightening, very invigorating, and but like I said, the key subject matter was habits, and I do believe that if you want to live a fulfilling, successful life, you do have to develop good habits.
That's
I truly
right.
believe that. So
That's right, Dewey.
I would say that to the whole world. So
Yes.
yeah, so that's all I wanted to say. Just develop good habits if you really want to be a success in life. That's it.
Yes, you do have to. You do have to have good habits.
Yes.
I put Marcus. I put your Cash App in there. So if anyone wants to sit here and donate to the Cash App, it is Randall Thor 100. The name that will pop up is M Chilimbwe. You will sit here and see that. And Marcus, is there any last words that you have for us before we close out?
Yes, I want to appreciate the invite. I'm grateful that we was able to share, and that it may have been useful for some people, and that some lessons may have been learned from what the science world say. Again, shout out to the pseudo killers.
Shout out to the pseudo killers.
Yeah,
thank y'all for stopping by too. I absolutely love. We love the pseudo killers. You know, me and Sakina love the pseudo killers. You know,
absolutely.
We have a thing with y'all, right? It's a real kind of thing. So, you know, any one of y'all are always welcome here. If you want to sit here and share any information pertaining to the workforce, of course, that may be able to help others. You know, I don't think we answered Joelle's question exactly. Like, how do you hard to deal with people at work? What was the question? Let me go back to it.
For just a quick
before we get off here, I would like to address that.
Do? What do you got? Because I'm not aware of them.
Oh, so we are a group of individuals who teach that scientific literacy is the best way forward.
Okay.
And so we encourage individuals to look into science, STEM, economics, politics, history, and be well versed in scientific literacy.
Okay.
Believing that would be the best way forward, that it would give the greatest results out of it. So you have the pseudo killers, a group of individuals, mostly online. We do engage in a lot of community activities that teach, especially our people, mindfulness and teach them how to be aware of scientific. And then we address misconceptions about science. That's where the pseudo come in. So we do go and get people who just make stuff up.
Okay.
Because we feel as though that's very harmful. Right? And that science has progressed in such a way that we can benefit from knowing scientific literacy, right? And so that's what we do. And then there's another group, the community of skeptics. They're tied together very close. And that's what we do. You know, we on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and I don't know how long TikTok gonna be, but we on that too.
Exactly.
Okay. I'm gonna check it out.
Yeah, we're gonna be talking about that for sure. On Smoking Conversations. Yeah, we going to Sakina's channel so we can get down with the get down.
All right.
Pop our chops.
If y'all enjoyed the brain conversation, we actually did a series on the brain.
Okay.
Like we did a whole series on how emotions are made.
Yes.
And I think that is definitely I think it'll be beneficial. So we did that, and then we do things like evolution, you know, African American history. So it's a wide plethora. Each of them, it's a lot of us pseudo killers, and they tend to have their own specialty. Like me and Sosa are two ends of human behavioralism, right? And so he was in the chat earlier, and so he deals with the brain too. Bob deals with anthropology, you know what I'm saying, and genetics. Anthony Bowman and Miss Juju deal with space, galaxy, and beyond. So astronomy and all like that. Miss Tiff, who was also in the chat, she would be lovely because that's what she does. She does project management. She helps us with communication and that's what she is, y'all, for us. And it's her expertise, and she's good at it. Very, very good at keeping us organized. So anyway, it's a group. It's not just all men. It's not just all women. It's not all atheists. It's not all skeptics. It's a blend of people who love science.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a whole collective. It's a whole collective. Yeah, and we do learn so much. And your conversations over there are great, are fantastic. And that, you know, if you're a person who enjoys higher learning, that is a great start. You guys' channel is a perfect start for people who enjoy higher learning. So Joel, so I'm going to get to Joel's question. He said, how do you communicate that you feel to your coworkers that they're not carrying their weight? Oh my gosh, that's actually a question for me. That is, if you can't find the right words to effectively talk to your coworker, that may be something you can talk to your manager. If your manager of your person is, um, you know, level-headed enough to talk with you about coming up with some proper solutions, because there are several factors too that make them not carry their weight. And so you don't know unless you are able to find a way to bridge the gap and have a proper communication with your coworker. Now, if your coworker is, if you're over your coworker, maybe you're a lead and then your coworker is just your coworker. But if you guys are on an equal playing field, where you and your co-workers are all, you know, no one's a manager, no one's a this, no one's a that. I think there is some conversation to be had. And Dewey, you may have some other great tips for that question about how, when your co-workers are not carrying their weight, what do you do? What are some things that you do at work?
Are you asking me that question?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Well,
Because you got some people over there. I might,
well, yeah, that
you
is
know, you
true.
know me. I be wanting to stomp
You know
over
what?
there.
You know what? You know what?
Like,
I'm gonna tell you this. I'm gonna tell you this. Not to dance around the question or anything, but there have been like a handful of people in the area where I'm at, and even before I would even make a complaint or voice my concern, I would sometimes have other people coming to me. Oh, well, you know, that person is not doing their job, and they're on their phone all the time, and oh, they take
yeah, because you
like
work. You do realize you're one of the only ones over there that work, right?
well, thank you.
That's
That's a
why
big
people
part.
are
And
asking you that.
and like
I mean, I'm just, you know, I'm just telling you
Marcus.
the truth. You work.
Yeah,
Other people don't.
but let me tell you
So
though, like Marcus was saying, you know, the people that take the 45-minute, you know, lunch breaks, and then just to kind of like elaborate on, you know, what to answer the question, there are people that take 45 minute lunch break, take an hour sometimes, and this is quite regular for them. This is a normal thing for them, and then taking, you know, 30-minute and 40-minute, and this is like every day. And then there are those that's on their phones all the time, away from the area. You can't find them. Now, the way that if it really comes down to it, LaShawn, I mean, if I would have to approach the manager and let them know, well, this person is not doing what they're supposed to, and it's putting us behind, and we're not on schedule as far as like us performing our jobs and everything, then I feel as though the manager would have to step in and say something to that person.
yeah,
So I'm
because
hoping I
I
made
will
it.
share this.
Huh?
Yeah, because I'm not all the time when people are not carrying their weight. Not all the time, or is it a thing of being lazy, or is it a
Right.
thing of them
Yeah.
being
Right.
irresponsible? Sometimes they really don't know what to do, and they thought they knew. They're going to spend a little time, you know, always trying to figure out what to do. But sometimes not carrying your weight is a lack of job. I want to say job description, or a lack of job duties. What do I do? What am I supposed to actually be doing? And so you have to, that's why you have to have, you know, you have to talk to your coworkers to see where they're at, see where they're
Right.
at in
Yeah.
the process. Because maybe you think they're here. Maybe you gave them way too much credit, and maybe they bit off more than they can chew. But either way it goes, more times than none, when people are not carrying their weight, it's because they really don't know what to do. And so you can mend that by just simply having a conversation with your coworker, saying, hey, you know, I noticed that, hey, you do these things. Is there anything I can help you with? Do you have any time during your break so we can go over this and that, or hey, I noticed you were kind of working that way. We do have other things and other resources that may can help you in this area. So whatever you spot out and see that could be the problem, which you have to spot the problem. You just can't assume, and you cannot by all means just go over there and tell your coworker what it is they're doing or not doing, because you don't know what it actually is. So, just by your mere observation, you can kind of get an overall in general understanding of what is going on with your coworker and why they're not carrying their weight.
Right.
And again, and if it's a chronic problem, if you see them lollygagging, or if you actually see something physically with your own two eyes that is causing the work lack, then that is a conversation you can have with your manager. But either way it goes, we need to find out what the root of the problem is on why a person is not carrying their weight. Usually there's always going to be a root.
Right. That's well said. And you're right. You're definitely right, LaShawn. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I enjoyed this session, everyone. Huh?
Yeah, so with go ahead, Dewey. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I do have to get off because I got to make a run, but I enjoyed it. And Marcus, thank you again for coming on and sharing your knowledge and your expertise. We all really appreciate that.
Thank you for having me. I mean, I appreciate all the love and support that y'all showed, man. I had a wonderful time.
I did too.
Now we're gonna find a way to bring you back, Marcus, and that's a fact right there. So this won't be the end. Let's just consider this something beautiful in the making, and we're just along with this for the journey. We're along for the ride. I'm here for it. I'm sure everybody else is here for it. So this has been really good. And so with that being said, I am going to sit here and end the live. Thank you, everyone who tuned in today. Thank you so much
Thank you
for joining our conversation with Corporate Conversations today with me, Dewey, and Rassha, and our guest, Marcus Chilimwe, talking about our healthy habits. And for those who are, I don't know if Sakina's going to come on or not, but we'll see you over at Smoking Conversations. Have a good one, everybody.
Okay, I'm signing off, everybody. Have a wonderful